on the murder of PC Andrew Harper and the arrest of 10 people on suspicion of his murder. Peter Kirkham is a former Detective Chief Inspector with the Metropolitan Police, and he's here. And we need to reflect, first and foremost, we are talking about not only a police officer, but a 28-year-old who just got married. This is tragic, absolutely tragic. How does it affect the police force in general?
It's devastating. The police force is often talked about as a family, and incidents like this hit it like a family. Officers all across the country, not just in his force, not just on his unit, will feel it just like losing a relative. And not just serving officers, former officers like myself do as well. It is devastating. Now, obviously, all our thoughts are at the moment with his family and his friends and his colleagues. But it will have an impact way beyond that.
What do we do to try to clamp down on this? And we say that not just in the light of this one incident, but in what we've seen over the past week with two very bad assaults on police officers and one with we understand, possibly life-changing injuries.
Indeed, and we've been warning about this happening for some time. What we've seen for a number of years now is assaults on police rising. And I think the stats currently show that a police officer is being assaulted about every 20 minutes. Now, most of those assaults are pushes and shoves and whatever, but a very significant number of them that we never hear about, that are never publicised, involve far more serious injuries. We need to make sure that the police service provides proper welfare support for injured officers. We need to make sure that they treat officers that are injured to the point where they can't work as police officers anymore, are treated fairly. Sadly, these things, the welfare side of things is improving a little bit, but it's still patchy. We need to make sure that we bring justice for those officers that are assaulted on duty. We've seen the previous government pass some legislation, it was backbench legislation, but it passed through, to raise the penalties for a lower level assault on police officers, but we're not seeing that reflected in the sentences of the courts. When vehicles are used, or where there's a serious attempt to attack an officer, but through luck or the skill of the surgeons or whatever, no serious and permanent damage is caused, we quite often see undercharging by the Crown Prosecution Service, who charge the actual lower level injury caused rather than the attempted more serious assault. We see the courts not awarding sentences, not giving sentences out that are swinging deterrent sentences that we used to see 20 and 30 years ago. I remember courts, magistrates' courts, Crown courts, saying to people, you will not assault police officers and expect not to go to jail. And they were sending people to prison for significant periods of time, even if it was their first offence and even if they were in drink, let alone where it was a deliberate attempt to avoid arrest or being caught in the course of a crime.
I mean, within all of this, you're looking at a deterrent because you want to obviously stop this happening. Is that the best way? I mean, is changing the prosecutions and the sentencing guidelines the best way, or does something more need to be done actually on the front line to help prepare police officers or monitor more the locations they're going out to?
There's definitely scope for more thought to be given to the health and safety of officers on patrol and response duties. Again, I've been saying this for some time. The police service since 1997 has been covered by the Health and Safety at Work Act. In this studio, your employer has to make sure that this is a safe environment to work in and that you've got safe systems of work. And we see that every day in these sorts of environments. Well, of course, that applies to police officers on patrol and response duties. It's not as clear-cut and it's a much messier situation, but they need to think about their deployment. They need to think about single crewing. They need to think about deploying officers to incidents and perhaps telling them to stand off until backup has arrived with them, and then they arrive together in sufficient numbers to deal with it. Now, there should be risk assessments in place. I'm not sure there are. And I'm certainly not sure that they've been amended, as the numbers on patrol duties have reduced.
It's going to raise questions about arming police officers, because these sort of incidents always do. I can't remember from our past conversations, Peter, if that's something you support or not. I don't think it is it?
Not generally. I think we need to see all patrol and response officers equipped with taser, and I think that's been the case for some time. It's increasing, but I think the time has come to make it all patrol and response officers. We need to make sure that there's sufficient armed officers in specialist units available to be at the scene of anything within 12 minutes or whatever the emergency response time is. Now, sometimes that won't work because they get tied up with stuff, but we need a lot more armed response units, especially in rural areas.
It's very difficult to recruit officers to an armed division, isn't it, because of the situations they face once they fire a weapon.
It is, and the Independent Office for Police Conduct need to look at how they operate, and if they will not sort their lives out, then we need legislation that reins them in a bit. They've got carried away, and to be frank, sometimes it's a persecution of police officers doing their job, not a proper investigation and prosecution where the evidence is there. But in terms of the use of vehicles, I can't see anything other than deterrent sentences, and especially around pursuits. The only way that the police can stop pursuits is dangerous, and they get criticised for doing it. What we need is swinging sentences for anyone that engages in pursuit, with maybe a minimum starting sentence of 5 years, a minimum starting sentence.
Just a very brief final thought, Peter. Back to the reality of this tragedy. Does it help? Does it help his colleagues, his family and former officers like yourself? Does it help to know that there is absolute public outrage and sympathy at this?
It does, massively so, especially against the backdrop of years of the police being criticised over everything. And it is really refreshing to hear what appears to be genuine words of concern from a government now that we never got from Theresa May.
OK, Peter, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.